Welcome back to our discussion on Gnosticism versus New Testament truth, a fight for the minds and hearts of Christians, for their obedience with a long history. We're looking at the origins of Gnosticism and Christianity. We've covered the truth on looking at the background of Gnosticism and the Christianity, the history of the Jewish diaspora, where it took Jews from the Israel. We've looked at Second Temple, syncretism versus religious purity. We've looked at the origins of Jewish Gnostics and how Philo and the rabbis and the Essenes worked against them. We've looked at Gnosticism versus the major big truths in the Bible. We've looked at how Luke speaks about one of the major players in Gnosticism, Simon, in Acts 8, and puts him aside as a magician, as someone who Peter decried and told was sinning, full of iniquity and gall. We looked at two Gnostics with theism. Now we're going to look at some of the rebuttals. We're not going to cover the rebuttals in John. I'll cover that in looking at 1 John. So let's pick up those rebuttals, the rebuttals by Eusebius and Irenaeus. We looked at some of the Irenaeus work there earlier. Remember that Irenaeus is someone who was served in Lyon in France after the Christians there were killed. There's a couple pictures of Irenaeus and Eusebius. Those are just drawings or icons. We don't really know. So when we look at the Christians that wrote against the heresies, you had the Balasetes, the Cainites, very much like the Cainites came from the Jewish Cainites, the Nicolaitans, you can do anything you want, the Ophirites. Again, I read you some of the quotes out of their things, the Sethites, Valentius. You notice John is writing against all of these. Clement's writing in his first and his second letter. Irenaeus is writing. John is writing probably about 90. Clement's writing about 90. Irenaeus writes after they've died. Clement of Alexandria, Hippolytus in the first Christian training manual, Tertullian, and Origen. So you see that this is a fight that goes on. And probably still to this day, you'll see pieces of it as heresies even today. What does Eusebius says? This is what he says about the incarnation. Realize it's a turn of cheek because he's making, he's quoting, but he's showing how ridiculous it is. The incarnation, having endured everything else, he was continent. Just Jesus exercised his divinity. He ate and drank in a particular manner, not evacuating his food. He didn't get rid of it in the bathroom like the rest of us. So much was the power of continence that the food was not corrupted. He had no corruptibility. Okay, he ate, he drank, and the disciples never noticed he didn't use the bathroom. Okay. Another specimen of a deistic comment of this type is examined in the Acts of John. That was a date designed which is not later than the second half of the first century. Okay. According to this gospel, the Lord had no proper material existence. He assumed the differences during to different beholders. Sometimes his small was small and uncomely, other times his stature reached to the heavens, he seemed to have a solid material body, other times he appeared. It was only a phantom of Christ that was crucified. During the crucifixion, it was real. Christ appears to John on the mountain, says, John, and to the multitude below, I'm being crucified, and with the other pierced with lances and reeds and gall, give me to. But I put in your heart to come up this mountain, that thou might hear what's need for a disciple to learn from his master, and for a man to learn his God. Just shows John the mystic, whoever this one writing this is a cross of light in himself above the cross, not having any shape but a voice. This does not match the New Testament. Ooh, remember, lots of people were called John. In fact, you have another John, doesn't really count any. Now, what does Eusebius said? He says about it, be deaf, therefore, anyone who speaks to you apart from Christ, who was the race of David, the child of Mary, who was truly born, ate and drank, who was truly persecuted under Pontius Pilate, who was crucified and died before the eyes of those in heaven and those on earth and under those under the earth, who is also truly raised from the dead, since his Father raised him up, who like manner will raise us up who believed, even his Father will raise us in Jesus Christ, apart from whom we have no true life. But if some godless men, i.e. the unbelievers, and he classifies the Gnosticism unbelievers, assert that he suffered an only phantom, it is they that are phantoms. Why am I in bonds? Why, moreover, do I pray that I might fight the world beast? This is what Ignatius says, and Eusebius is quoting. Why more do I pray I might fight the new beast? Then I die for naught. Then I lie against the Lord. You must read Ignatius sometimes. He's quite blunt on this matter. Eusebius describes Cineras, the one who described his humanity's divinity. Who was this Christ? Cineras, a man educated in the wisdom of the Egyptians. Notice we're showing the Egyptians taught that the world was not made by the primary God. We sound like the Ophirites. But by a certain power separated above him and a distance from the authority, who is a supreme over the universe, ignorant of God who is above. He represented Jesus as not having been born a virgin, but the son of Joseph and Mary, according to the ordinary course of human generation. But he was nevertheless more righteous, prudent, and wise. Remember the Ebonite, the poor man, the man who is holy and righteous. Moreover, after his baptism, Christ descended upon him in the form of a dove from the supreme ruler, and then he proclaimed the unknown Father and performed miracles. He's talking about that. But at last Christ departed from Jesus, and Jesus suffered and rose again, while Christ, remember, impassible, far above, as much as he was a spiritual being. Now here's the quote I mentioned earlier. Irenaeus records in Versus Hares against heresies, the famous anecdote told by Polycarp, the bishop of Simon. Notice he was taught by Polycarp, who was a bishop of Smyrna, around the same area of Ephesus, who was taught by John. John, the disciple of the Lord, going to bathe at Ephesus, and perceiving Cetheris within, rushed out of the bathhouse without bathing. Probably, remember, Ephesus was a huge city, modern facilities, bathing house, claiming, let's fly, lest the bathhouse fall down.